Alan is the CEO and co-founder of Film Hub, a global all rights film and TV distributor, a Brazilian American with a French last name, Wharton graduate. Alan is a lifelong cinephile and entrepreneur. As Film Hub CEO, Alan has shepherded thousands of films through every stage of the distribution process. He'll tell you that his favorite movie is Cinema Paradiso, but really it's Happy Gilmore. Which I actually also quite enjoy. So, welcome, Alan, and welcome to another one of our series of Eight Above Substack webinars. I'm actually, okay, so now, sorry, just people are, so so just as an FYI, we're recording this session. I'll be posting it on the Substack in the next couple of weeks with also some notes as well. So there's no reason for anyone else to record it than the people on our team that's recording it. But it'll be available very shortly. Please, I think everyone's been great about being on mute, but if you can be on mute until we get to the Q&A session, and then we might do the Q&A session where I'm going to ask the questions that everyone posts in the chat. So feel free to use the chat to say hello, tell us where you're from, and also if you have questions. One thing, if you ask a question early on, it's something that we might address during the course of this Q&A. And so I'm going to ask Alan some questions, and then we'll open it up for Q&A at the end of the session. So first question, Alan, is why is AVOD important now, and what has happened with TVOD? AVOD being ad-supported video on demand, and TVOD being transactional video on demand.
Awesome. Well, John, first off, thanks for having me. Great to be here with you. Thank you, everyone, for attending here, and excited for the people that are also going to be watching this later. I think it's helpful to understand, AVOD as the first piece is really understanding the way that kind of, film has evolved and kind of taking it back even a step further, right? When film was established, right, theatrical was kind of the original distribution method, as we all know, right? We then went to broadcast. We then started DVDs. And in each one of these instances, shelf space was limited. You could only have so many films distributed. There's very limited, distribution of them. And you had to distribute territory by territory. Well, streaming came along. And then all of a sudden, technology allowed you to have hundreds of thousands of films on services. And that's completely changed the game, and it changes how you think about it. So advertising video on demand is one of the kind of three main VOD formats, which is based on films that monetize via advertising. Transactional video on demand being pay for rent, pay for purchase, and subscription means the consumer subscribes to watch films on that service. I think the biggest piece to understand is that in the AVOD and transactional methodology, it's really how you make money for the most part is generally based upon how many people are watching your film is the key to realize and understand.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. It's actually when you were talking about first there's theatrical, then television in terms of how, in a sense, there used to be a scarcity in a sense to rights. And I actually use that same language. And it's interesting that when you talk about shelf space, because I just revisited Chris Anderson's Long Tail the other day, and it's retail, there's limited shelf space, online, unlimited shelf space, and hence that, is part of the concept of the long tail, which is what digital distribution is all about. Yeah. So why should YouTube be an important part of any filmmaker's strategy?
So I think the hardest most important thing about realizing about YouTube is a behemoth. And it is now 11% of viewing a video, and that is a number that can't be forgotten. That is bigger than the Netflix's number. I think Netflix came in at like 6 to 8% of viewing this past quarter, and that's ultimately the biggest reason right now. And YouTube is always seen as cat videos, and you have this old misperception of what YouTube is. It's now professional film. It's major creators like Mr. Beast. It is the new cable channel, and you need to realize that.
Yeah. And, I think you also talk about how filmmakers have been kind of nervous about being on YouTube before, because they don't want to be associated with cat videos, or they think it's just loading up a film for free, which still happens in many cases.
Yeah, I think, as a filmmaker, it's scary because one, having the potential of your film there's this misperception, right, of YouTube is just a place where things get pirated, right? That's a perception that people have, and it's scary because it does happen, right? But the key is monetizing on YouTube is a high potential and a high revenue source if you do it right.
Yeah, and the other thing that I always say about YouTube, not that I'm a fan of media conglomerates, but YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, with the first one being the parent company of Google or Alphabet, or being their sister company, Google being the largest search engine, which is related to YouTube. And there's obviously synergies between those two search engines. So when people search for content, they're often finding themselves on YouTube.
Huge search engine, but also the most important thing, the best ad sales team in the world.
Right,
If you
right.
want your film to be monetizing, you want the best ad sales team in the world selling ads against it, and that's YouTube's
Right.
team.
And then the other thing that you pointed out is how connected the importance of connected TV to YouTube success and being on that it's become central to a lot of people. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So YouTube originally, right, was a web app. Started
Mhm.
2005 when it launched. Slowly, as connected TVs have grown, especially in the United States, right? YouTube is connected TVs are still highest penetration is in the United States. So, you can go to any Best Buy, Walmart, get a TV now for less than $100. That's actually decent now, and it's still growing abroad in terms of popularity. But in the U.S., YouTube now as a standalone TV app has become massive. And then
Mhm.
not only just on YouTube, but also they launched YouTube TV, which is a standard kind of, more standard cable application that also you can watch movies and TV on as well. And so
So
between
that
those two apps, you've ended up with a massive potential for streaming.
right. So the YouTube app is distinct from the YouTube TV app
Correct.
itself. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
But
cool.
there is some content that is shared between the two. And we can
Right.
go a little bit deeper into that in a bit.
Well, right. So I think we're getting to that a little bit, which is what are the different ways to monetize? How can filmmakers monetize their films or series on YouTube?
Yeah. So there's a couple different ways that you can work with YouTube. So one, you sell your film to broadcasters, History Channel, the Learning Channel, you name it, ABC, and that kind of will end up monetizing obviously via YouTube TV. You can direct upload and create your own channels on YouTube. I do not recommend that. It is very hard to grow your audience unless you want to spend full time learning how to do YouTube, build thumbnails, build an audience on YouTube. I do not recommend that. It takes a lot of time and effort. Um, you can work with a distributor who distributes to movie channels on YouTube. These are companies that solely focus on building, channels dedicated to movies. You can find a lot of them. Just search movie channels on YouTube. There's solutions like V channels, Stash TV has number. There's Movie Central. These are all movie channels that distributors sell to.
Right.
And
And can you just talk a little
yeah,
bit about that? Because, my understanding is that those channels have like potentially hundreds of thousands, if not millions of subscribers. So but it's not really possible for filmmakers would have to go through their digital distributor to get onto those platforms, onto those movie channels.
correct. Yes, most of those movie channels do not take submissions directly from filmmakers. They want to chat with a distributor that distributes those titles.
Right.
Um,
Okay. So we
and
have upload yourself,
yeah,
then these various free movie channels,
yep.
then yeah,
And then there's also the new YouTube movies and TV section, which has both a transactional component, which honestly it's YouTube, so people aren't paying much to buy and rent because there's so many things available for free. But the new section that is doing extremely well is their free with ads section that allows they work you can watch it free with ads, and then they're also, of course, you can subscribe as YouTube has YouTube Premium as well. That you get received as part of you get paid out as part of a revenue share pool. So it's kind of a hybrid AVOD, SVOD, TVOD service in the end, the movies and TV section of YouTube.
right.
And the interesting thing is that people don't really realize the movies and TV section is on, if you were to go on your TV app, it is on YouTube app, and it is also within the YouTube TV app as well. So you have multiple now chances if you're in the movies and TV section to be monetized.
Right.
And the key that people, and this new service that's really been developed over the last like 2 to 3 years and still just scratching the surface, is it monetizes at a much higher rate. And the history is YouTube's team was always having problems with selling ads to major advertisers. They have one of the best ad sales teams in the world. But ad sales team would go to major, places and say, "Hey, do you want to buy ads on YouTube?" And they would say, "Well, I don't want my brand to show up next to cat videos." And so what they did was they created this special section for premium movies and TV content that they, are very selective in the content that they take on. They only have a select number of distributors they work with. FilmHub is one of them, and they curate a lot. And so therefore they can go to these advertisers and say, "Hey, we understand you're interested in YouTube, but maybe you're a little bit scared, or maybe you're worried of brand safety for your brand. Well, we have this pre-curated section that we have reviewed everything. We have made sure that is directly within kind of your brand guidelines that you want, and they can sell those ads at a higher CPM, which is great for the filmmaker because they're one in more locations on YouTube then. It has this special kind of, premium designation, and it's higher CPMs than standard YouTube. And
So
so
for the
that's really
so
important.
sorry,
Yeah.
just to jump in, there may be people in the audience that don't understand what a CPM is.
Yes. So CPM means cost per mil. So that is the dollar amount that you make per 1,000 ad impressions. And an ad impression means that your Coca-Cola ad from the Super Bowl is displayed to you. That's one impression. So it's cost per 1,000 people watching an ad, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Okay.
generally, just so you I think it's helpful for people to understand like what are CPM's amounts, because it's helpful to understand kind of like structure and dollar amounts. So, I'll give you an idea, like NBC during the Olympics, right? Those are hugely expensive CPMs. They're $60 to $80, right? CPMs in most advertising-based services right now range between 50 to 15 to $40. Some go as low as $5 to $15 CPM. And so there's wide variety of how much a CPM can be within there.
Right. Okay. And I think the last way that you were mentioning in terms of how a filmmaker can get up on YouTube, so is similar to the free movie channels, but channel families. Can you talk a little bit about that? It's like a different category, but related to free movie channels.
Yeah, so those are free movie channels. Those are just the aggregation total of those. So, for instance, you may have, um, you know, many of these movie channels have different brands. One's a horror one, one's a true crime one. Those are kind of, they're just different brands within those.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I was going to have you, is there anything more that you want to talk about YouTube movies and TV especially? Or I think that we kind of covered everything so far.
I think
Uh,
the one thing, right, with YouTube movies and TV is you have to have a distributor to reach that team.
right,
And that is key for people to realize is that you have to have a distributor, and there aren't many distributors that actually can license to YouTube. So, for instance,
right.
FilmHub, we actually distribute. We Many distributors have to come to us to get onto YouTube movies and TV.
Right.
And
So
yeah,
so you're one of the like in a sense you're one of the key aggregators to YouTube and YouTube movies and TV, but other distributors have can access that, but they have to come through you in a
exactly.
sense.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And just as a point, generally that means that then the other distributor that doesn't have direct access has to give you, Film Hub, a cut, a percentage for having that access. So there's a little bit of double dipping going on, just as, just to be aware. But that
yep,
happens kind of across the board, where there's many distributors have direct access to certain platforms, but don't have direct access to all platforms. So that's also something, just FYI to filmmakers, when you're talking to different distributors, to ask them about what their direct access to specific platforms and whether they have to go through someone else like FilmHub or another company in order to gain access to those platforms. So just you're aware of like whether there's additional percentages being taken off. And that's also, just to digress a little bit more, that's also a negotiating point that you can have that taken out of their percentage. So it's not taken out of your percentage. So just as an FYI.
Great
So,
coaching, John. Great coaching for
okay, let's
filmmakers.
just, yeah. Um, all right. So how is YouTube movies and TV different from other AVOD, SVOD services?
Key is you have the massive reach of YouTube, right? So you have YouTube is a massive search engine acquisition tool. You have every topic, theme, genre. It's a full world, right? You have everything from, you know, influencers telling you about what electronic gadget to buy, what car to buy. And so you have this massive area then where you can, it serves as a lead gen engine and it's search. And so your film on YouTube, the key is in realizing in video on demand services, you are trying to get your film found in search. What matters is your metadata, your artwork. You're trying to mess with algorithms so that your film shows up. And so it's basically, you know, it's kind of like free marketing in some ways as a filmmaker if you make your film discoverable in the right way. And that's something people have to really realize is like you're trying part of your marketing of a film isn't just like driving audience awareness, it's making your film findable and searchable with the metadata and the artwork. And that's
Right.
key.
Cool. Are there any resources actually? Because I mean, that's talked about a lot, but I don't know whether I haven't seen a lot of writing about, how to make your metadata more, more searchable on search engines or on platforms or not. But that's actually something, if you don't have, maybe it's something that, you can talk to your team about, and then we can also post that as a supplement, unless you're already aware of it. But just
There's
like,
yeah, happy to post some supplemental materials. There's a lot. We have a lot on our help center. We also have a team, as a distributor, right? We have a team that goes through and updates metadata for our filmmakers,
yeah,
right? Because like for us, we're equally incentivized with our filmmakers. We want them to be as discoverable as possible. We have a team that goes through and fixes artwork for our filmmakers.
right.
We're constantly playing around with topics and themes and making sure it's programmed in the right shelves on streaming services. That's one of our jobs as a distributor to make sure that happens.
Okay. All right, great. So, just in terms of also getting back to how YouTube movies and TV is different from other AVOD systems, one of the things that you had mentioned was higher fill rate.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Can you first say what fill rate is,
Yeah. Good question.
and then talk about how that works?
Yeah. So this is a topic that's come up a lot in the filmmaking community recently because a lot of filmmakers have been complaining that they've been on, watching their film on a streaming app and they can't, they're not seeing any ads. They're like, why am I having no ads? Well, it's helpful for the entirety of the industry to realize that there is a massive problem right now in advertising based services. And this stems from a complete shift in the way the industry works. So, advertising dollars are generally committed by massive companies, the big CPG brands, a year to 2 years in advance, and sometimes three. It can be five. It can be even longer. Like they're really slow cycles. Ultimately, how these work, and so most ad dollars are attributed to broadcast still. Money has not been fully attributed to connected TV yet. And so people are watching more and more TV on connected TV where the advertising dollars are still being spent in broadcast.
Mm,
So the viewing is massively higher, but there's not as much ad spend. And then you
mm,
had massive entrance of folks like Amazon into the ad market. And so all of a sudden all of these ad dollars got sucked up and people are still watching. And so ad fill, what it is every time an ad request comes on a VOD service, it is there an ad that is available to be served at the dollar amount that is based on a bid. It's kind of how
mhm,
it's a bidding system ultimately of how it works. And right now, there is not enough ads at high enough CPMs for the amount of watch time that there is needed. And
mm,
so that is a problem that the industry has. It has low fill rate. But the key is with YouTube, they have one of the top ad sales teams in the industry. And so their fill rates are much higher.
mm.
And that is one thing that is key. And it's one of the reasons why people are making more money generally on YouTube's movies and TV section than other advertising based services.
Yeah, interesting. I was wondering why, because my wife is obsessed with the show Naked and Afraid. So I was just, and she always watches it on a different AVOD platform.
Yeah.
And I always wonder, why are there no ads? Like this is I'm supposed to be subjected to ads here,
Yeah.
and I don't see, maybe there will be one 20-second ad and that's it, you know? So good. Okay,
And
that's,
people, and like, guess what, John? You just said that happened on Naked and Afraid, right?
which is a very popular
Very
show.
popular top show. This is not like this is where I think the filmmaking community needs to realize we think that these problems are just it's just the independent filmmaker getting screwed over. It is everyone in the industry. It is an industry wide problem that needs to be addressed right now, and
Right.
people are working on it, but not nearly fast enough, and much more needs to be done.
Okay. So, what rate of pitches are accepted to YouTube movies and TV? You said it's curated.
Yeah,
So, just curious, because there's plenty of other platforms that also don't accept
yeah.
lots of content.
So, the key is for YouTube, right? I talked about it earlier. They are making sure that they want to be able to sell premium placement ad inventory against the films and TV shows that they have in this section.
Mhm.
And so, because of that, YouTube really wants to make sure the number one piece is that they have brand safety. And we can share the link after this, but there's a whole YouTube section around brand safety, ad guidelines, things around like hate speech, gore, sex scenes that obviously don't align with a lot of brands, right? Um, and so those are some of the things that they're looking for is brand safety. And then also, they have YouTube has one of the most massive sets of data across millions and hundreds of millions of videos probably at this point, and that data informs them what people want to watch. And so if they have data that says, hey, this is probably not likely to succeed, they're not going to take your film. They're comparing
Right,
against data. So
right,
we generally see that of our pitches that go through, depends on like the quality of titles, the topics, the themes, right? But overall, I think we see about a 30 to 40% take rate against our pitches, and that's pretty standard across most you know advertising based services in today's world, right?
right, right. It
Um,
does make me, I hate to be a little bit of a downer here, but it does make me concerned about because there's been such a chill on, politically adjacent content and things like that. And just, be curious to see, what pe people's experiences are, when they try to get up onto YouTube movies and TV and other AVOD platforms, what kind of success that has, based on the kind of content that you're creating. So,
Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, things that are political leaning right now are obviously people are scared of talking about things in the political spectrum. People are afraid of getting canceled for XYZ reasons. And it's a tough time for those topics.
yeah, it
And
is.
but it always is, honestly. People are always, trying to walk on water. And it's silly because these are conversations that need to be had on both sides of the aisle, no matter what side you are.
Mhm.
And they all should just be seen.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, okay, I guess do you want to talk about channel growth a little bit? But I think we've also, it feels like we've almost been a commercial for YouTube here for a little bit too much. So, but
Well,
it's
we are
pretty, it
very
sounds like
happy to be partners
filmmakers.
with them, and they've been doing very
Right.
well for our filmmakers.
Yeah.
So we have been happy with them.
Well, why don't we talked about why don't we talk about some of the films? Now, I know you can't name the names of films, but I've asked you to kind of tell the kind of film that they are and kind of what year they were released and then what the revenue is from these. And we have what's interesting and depending on how you lay this out, it's interesting that there's also library titles that are doing quite well. So some of the
Yeah.
numbers that we're going to talk about are not only current titles, but also library titles.
Yeah, totally. So I think, the way we think about this, right? I think the most important thing when you begin talking about numbers in film and TV,
Hmm.
the key is there are power laws in this industry. It is something that people will not talk about and is one of the most important things for filmmakers to realize at any given time. And this operates across the entirety of the industry. And what a power law is, just to give you the basics of it, it is that a certain percentage makes an outsized percentage of the revenue. And you can't break this. It is impossible to break in anything media. And generally, it's about an 80-20, 90-10 split. If you want, read the book Blockbuster by Anita Elbersay. It's a great book that kind of explains some of the details of this. And you see it at every level of the industry. Every level of the industry has these general, details. Even studios, right? They are going the tentpole strategy, right? Is they know that one of their films is going to make the lion's share of their revenue or the top X percent. And that's one of the most important things to realize. And so when filmmakers say like, "Oh, I'm in the middle, I'm not making nothing," like it is true. It is true, but it's true for everyone at every single level. And
Hmm.
so that's the most important thing to realize.
Yeah,
Um,
I think part of the reason it's important and why many filmmakers don't think about that is because when you talk about that, then 20% of films just almost by design, systemic design, only 20% of films are going to perform financially, and 80% of films are not going to perform financially. And while there's many, I talk to filmmakers and I talk about this a lot, there's a lot of other motivations for making film than just making money. But still, a lot of people want to make return, et cetera. It's part of what um, provides a healthy ecosystem for our community, for people to be able to make their money back, it creates sustainable careers. So it is something that is good for filmmakers to understand, but it's also difficult for filmmakers to understand. So it's interesting. We're going to talk about some outline, some higher grossing films here, I believe, and some moderate grossing films. But then there is kind of like an average of earnings, which will be, kind of a little bit of a wake-up call for people. So,
yeah.
but we'll hold that to the end.
And just like I think one thing that's helpful for folks to realize, right? This isn't just something in film and TV. This exists in many industries, right?
Right,
The number of goods that sell on Amazon, for
right,
instance, 90%, like top 10% makes 90% of the revenue. It's true across many businesses. Spotify and music, it's everywhere. Power
yeah,
laws are something you really need to understand. It's starting a business. 90% of
right,
businesses fail, right?
right.
And so this is not just film and TV. You got to really understand that piece.
Okay.
But getting into some of the numbers, I know that's the people thing people get excited about, right? I mean, we had some films. For instance, we had an indie political thriller that did in 2023 did over $140,000 in 2 years on YouTube.
Yeah,
That's good
and
revenue.
that also didn't have high level cast on there.
Correct. Correct. Right.
Yeah.
And I think the key is realizing that's one source of revenue,
Mhm.
right? You're as a filmmaker, especially when you're in revenue share land and you're not selling an exclusive license, you need to have your film in as many locations as possible
Mhm.
because you need your revenue on YouTube. You need your revenue on this AVOD, that transactional service, DVDs. You need it everywhere because every single location is a potential where you can get sold. And that's the key of what your distributor needs to do for you.
Yeah. One of the things I say is that that digital broadcast, that basically digital distribution is the consumer um, value is essentially convenience. And so if you're going to make it, if this sector of your rights is about convenience, then you should make it as convenient as possible across as many platforms as possible. Granted, there might be an instance where a certain platform might pay you extra for a certain holdback on other platforms, and
Yep.
then that might be worth it. But in general, if there is no holdback, no one paying you extra for holdback, it does make sense to put it up as as widely as possible. The caveat being, because I know I'm going to get feedback on this, is that there's still a certain amount of digital windowing strategy that goes
Mm-hmm.
on that is based on the potential of earning, which generally there's like this traditional, well, first of all, there would be a pay one window, then a transactional window, which is normally about 90 days, and then maybe a pay two window. And you can correct this, Alan, because you know this better than me, and then an AVOD window. But with depending on how the film is performing on, I'm kind of actually curious. I'm going to digress because I have you here. Are TVOD windows shrinking from that traditional 90-day TVOD window
Yeah.
that used to exist?
So it totally depends on the film, the release strategy, how it's financed, how you're planning to market. You can't apply a cookie cutter, this is what it should be, right?
Mhm.
So, for instance, if you co produce a film with Amazon, right, you're probably stuck in that deal for 5 years. Your title's there, right?
Yeah.
Um, that completely changes the strategy, right?
Right.
If you complete a film and we sell it to Netflix and it's there for a 2-year window, right? How you think about releasing it afterwards, you're probably going to not think about like releasing it transactionally because a lot of people have already seen it. You want to get it everywhere,
Yeah.
right? If it's a film, hey, you haven't sold a pay one window, but you've got a built-in audience. Like we just actually had the program this past month, which hit number 6 on iTunes, right? Known audience, built-in, filmmaker had a built-in audience, knew how to market, knew how to target them. That's one where you need to go transactional, right? And we're going to keep that transactional window for a long time until it kind of realize, hey, it's petering out, it's not going.
Right.
But most filmmakers, they think, oh, I got to do a transactional window. First thing I always ask them, do you actually have a built-in audience or an audience that you think you know exactly how to reach and they want to watch your film?
Yeah.
If you don't, do not do that because you will waste your time, you'll waste your money, and it is not going to go well for you.
Right. So just for some people who maybe don't know what a pay one window is, just can you explain what a pay one window is?
Yeah. Pay one window is when you make a film, kind of the premium SVOD broadcasters will pay you to license your film for a set period of time. So maybe it's, hey, this is going to be a tentpole title on Netflix, and they want to license it for 2 years, right? After your festival, maybe it's gone to a festival, and they bought it at TIFF, and that's an example of what a pay one window could be. It's for a set period of time, and it's the first kind of that film had a paid upfront deal. Those deals are 0.x% of films. Like it just doesn't really happen much anymore. You go to any film that was just at Sundance, any film that was at TIFF, 95% of them are not sold. And don't forget, folks, these are the films that got in.
Right.
So don't be scared if you're not getting a pay one window. Don't be scared. You can make a lot of money and still not have those. And even actually on a lot of the pay one windows that are being offered, we turn a lot of them down at FilmHub because we see the numbers that they're asking for, and it's pennies compared to what the filmmaker we think can make. Obviously, the question always comes of bird in the hand, two in the bush. Those are questions you have to ultimately decide with your distributor or sales agent that you're working with.
Cool. All right, great. All right, some more examples. So I
Oh,
think you have
cool.
a supernatural documentary from 2023.
Yeah, Supernatural documentary 2023, over 88,000 in just 9 months. We had a holiday rom-com. Everyone loves their holiday rom-coms. Did 38,000. Key is you would think a holiday rom-com only does well in December timeframe. Nope, throughout the year. People want to watch things at different times. This is where it comes down to the point that buyers believe that, hey, it has to be done in this period. Well, it's being constantly shown now that people have all different watching habits. And that is really the job now of technology-based streaming services, is to have everything available and personalize exactly what John wants to watch. That's the key. And that's, there's somebody who just wants to watch holiday rom-coms all year. That's awesome.
That's just not me, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's not you. I'm sorry. I don't want to put you in a box, John.
Dial me up some film noir or maybe some body horror, and
there we go. There we go.
and some social issue documentaries. There's a nice mix for you.
Awesome.
So probably pretty confusing to most algorithms, though. So who the F is this guy watching all this different stuff? So
I mean, I'll talk actually, John. One point on that, right, is movie algorithms and building algorithms for movie watching is one of the hardest technological problems to solve, because not only are your interests different, but you might be watching with someone else. And so now you have the dual interest, and the algorithm has no idea that there are multiple people watching there. Because you don't go to YouTube and say, hey, it's John and Alan watching. They have no idea. They just think it's John. And now my added taste is confusing you even more. And so building an algorithm for search on these services is really hard. It's a near impossible technological challenge.
Although I do find that YouTube does know that I like Jon Stewart. I'm
Yep.
interested. I watch Tottenham,
Yep.
and then I follow Tottenham, and then also I'm obsessed with killer robots and how robots are going to kill us all. So we get a lot of that's pretty much what YouTube serves up to me on a regular.
That's great. That's amazing. It's
Okay, so
content
let's
for
talk.
everyone, John.
Yes, content for everyone. So,
Yeah.
yeah, some library titles. You have a Latin American Spanish language comedy.
Yeah, done absolutely great. Over $190,000 in 2 years.
Why do you think? Because that's one of the strongest performers. And like in these strong performers, what do you think it is like in that,
Yeah.
like for instance, for that, like if you can, I know you,
Couple
it's
things that I would think about why we've done a lot of research on this title of why we think it did well. And one thing, massive Spanish speaking audience in the United States that is underserved in amounts of content and
right.
amounts of films and movies that resonate with them. So in the world of if YouTube's algorithm realizes that they're a Spanish speaker, there are very few films that are high quality Spanish films that match that group.
Mhm.
And so when you have I don't have you'd have to look at the exact number of Spanish speaking Americans, but it's pretty high, right?
Yeah,
And you compare that to the number of films, and you compare the number of Spanish speakers to the number of Spanish films available on YouTube. It's a pretty big difference, right? Compared to English speakers to English films, the chances are much higher, right?
right,
And that's a film
right,
also that had a built-in audience, had a massive theatrical release previously, and that helped.
right. Here's one that I'm kind of fascinated. There's a festival favorite indie drama that you have from 2014.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think the key here, right, is that's a film that was, previously on major SVOD services. We did a re-release for it. It's been to many film festivals, and still has an audience,
Mhm.
right? Still has an audience. A good film with good artwork will continue to generate money. The key as a filmmaker is you want to build a lifetime value of an annuity is what you're actually trying to build, right? To
Mhm.
build lasting value and lasting wealth. You want your library of films to generate ongoing recurring revenue for you. And you need to diversify that revenue as well. You can't have it all based in one film. What happens if, in 5 years from now, you realize, there's a random clearance that I screwed up. That film had been generating so much money. I have to take that film down. I can't get it anywhere. And you had all your eggs in one basket. That's scary, right?
Yeah,
Or maybe for some reason it falls out of, there's some issue that happens and it falls out of the current climate and it doesn't no longer resonates. You need to diversify. It's just like a stock portfolio of films. It's one of the
right.
reasons why I tell filmmakers as soon as they say Alan, I got $1 million to finance a movie. I say, great, go make 10.
Yeah, most filmmakers I think a lot of filmmakers don't want to hear that. I would say take $500,000 of that, make a movie, and save $500,000 for distribution and marketing. Or maybe not so extreme, 700,000 to make your movie, which is still pretty healthy, and then
Yeah,
300,000 for distribution and marketing, because there's really not going to be anyone else, especially these days, who's going to be putting up P&A in general for your film, except for in that I would say it's somewhere between 0.01% or 0.10% to 1% of
yeah,
films are going to have some company that's going to put P&A into their films.
yeah, totally. We are, we work very sparingly on like putting up P&A funds, and it's really like in an, kind of the cases where like, hey, we know we can, really turbocharge this film,
Mhm.
and it's a hard decision because it's risky,
Right. Yep.
right?
Yep. So let's turn to the sobering statistic, which is the average of films that make on YouTube movies and TV, which
Yeah.
you were generous enough to share with me.
Yeah, so generally the average has been about $1,200, which I believe the number is roughly over the last year, and that is generally about 4x other major AVOD services,
Mhm.
and that is huge. But guess what? When you look at the numbers, look at the percentage of number of people that YouTube has, 10 to 11%, right, in watchers, the amount of money that people are making, 4 times as much, which is 4 times generally some of the other major AVOD services. And
Right.
so it's all about size of audience on those services. And this
Right.
is one thing that I like really have to like dispel is while yes, certain AVODs have slightly higher CPM, slightly higher fill rate, the big difference, and I hear filmmakers saying this all the time, oh, this service doesn't pay me anything. It's not, they're generally making you about the same amount of revenue on a per watch basis across services. Slightly higher in certain services than others. Correct. But the key is it's all about the number of views that your film is getting.
Mhm.
Is your film attractive to people on that service? And so I just always ask filmmakers, look at your film compared to other films on that service and also think about the size of the audience. And yeah, there's going to be some services you're only going to make a small amount of money on. But the key is everything adds up. That is the
Right.
key. Everything
Right.
adds up, and even if it's a small amount of money, a small amount of money times five is a bigger amount of money, and that's important.
Yeah. Also, if you have library titles, like I still have, I have two documentaries about graffiti and street art that I still have not had time to load up yet, Alan, which I probably will be doing when I get back home. So, and
Oh,
I'm
I'm
curious to see,
excited to help get those some new life.
I'm curious to see how those are going to perform. So, and then, clearly I'll be reporting the statistics and see. But I also know that I think there'll be so I guess this brings me up to, I know we have some other topics, but just leading right into what can filmmakers do to ensure the success, or at least not ensure the success, but to give themselves a leg up in the success. I know you mentioned metadata
Yep.
and also certain marketing materials in terms of key art, etc. But what other are there other things? Is it strictly that, or are there other things
Yeah.
that filmmakers can do?
So it depends on the service, right? It depends on the service, depends on how to get, every service has different programming needs, right? The programming needs of Amazon are different than the programming needs of YouTube, and, they're constantly changing, right?
Mhm.
The key is you have to think about it, right? The number one thing, you and I would probably both say to a filmmaker is when you start thinking about making a film, first thing you should think about is, well, I think we'd both probably say this: do you want to make money or do you want to make art? Answer one of those questions. Don't say it's both.
I actually usually say money, career, change the world, or audience. What is your goal?
Similar,
And
yeah,
those are the
yeah,
four goals that
yeah.
I lay out. So,
Love that.
um, yeah.
Number two thing is who is the audience for this film?
Mhm.
Who really is the audience for this film? And think, does that audience exist on that service, on that streaming channel? That's the number two thing because it's not about does that audience exist, is that an audience that streaming channel cares about? And this
Yeah.
is where it's kind of a little bit of a, misalignment, right? Filmmaker may say, "Oh, I want my film to be on this service," and then I want that person to be found. Well, it changes, and that's something to think about. But the key for for instance, like on YouTube, right? Number one thing comes down to is this even brand and ad safe,
Mhm.
right? If you have a great slasher horror, which might do well on another AVOD service, but has a bunch of gore, that's not going to do. It's not going to even get selected on YouTube. So like you're dead in the water before you start.
Right.
And so that's one thing to think about. Two is like
But there's other services that like that kind of stuff.
exactly, right? But realize like if you make a bloody slasher horror, YouTube opportunities out the door.
Yeah.
You just got to think about that. And anything ultimately that is in the kind of more gory, highly sexualized, right? And this is the problem. I mean, European films coming to the United States have many problems
Mhm.
because they're generally more nudity in them.
Right.
And,
But
and
usually that's never gore and nudity has never prevented films from monetizing that kind of content in general. Usually there's some market for that content. So I'm not that worried about filmmakers, in the whatever you would might call sexploitation or, slasher or, giallo kind of content. They usually do relatively fine.
well, worried about them in terms of advertising based services. I think that is something they do
Right.
need to worry about, right? There's other ways to monetize that film, but there's or show.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
The other thing to think about is obviously artwork, right?
Mhm.
Artwork is number one thing. I mentioned earlier that you are constantly trying to get your film discovered in algorithms. People have 30 thumbnails on a screen. Does yours show up the best?
Right.
That's what you have to think about. Is it clear that they're going to get what they want, right? That's number, I forget which number I'm on, but that's one of the most important pieces as well. Um, Other piece I would also say is definitely trailer, no matter what. You would be surprised the number of filmmakers we work with that say, hey, you know what? I don't want to finish my trailer. I'm done. I just want my film to get out there. And then they'll complain a month later saying, like, I'm not making enough money. I was like, well, guess what? You're missing a trailer.
That's amazing. I've never. I I'm I'm kind of shocked to hear that, but um,
I
knowing
am,
that I knowing that I would work with would get that far. I
yeah,
even would go to do trailer cut downs also help, or is it primarily the trailer? Does it are also like 15s and 30s and 60s? Are those also helpful to
15s,
have up?
30s, 60s, always helpful. Depends on the service, right? Which ones they want. Um, always recommend having different thoughts on that or different cuts. But I think the key is, once again, just making sure that you have those assets done well, right?
Right.
It is a super important piece. You spend a ton of time as a filmmaker making a beautiful piece of art. Do the last bit. Get your
Yeah.
artwork right. Get your trailer done right. Get your captions done right. Look at your metadata. Spend the extra time there. That's the finishing touches, right?
Right. What about doing any sort of paid media, such as social ads?
Yeah.
And, does that, do you find, have some filmmakers experimented with that? Do you feel like that pushes the needle at all?
Yeah, it definitely can. I would say on YouTube, generally when you're advertising on YouTube to push on YouTube, it doesn't work very well because
Mhm.
the algorithms can kind of tell what we've seen in our paid media habits. But the key is whenever you're thinking about paid media in film, realize you're paying a CPM to drive towards a CPM. And so it's money after a low cost
Mhm.
of return. So ads work when you're selling a $300 dress, right? But you're paying for views. So the key is you got to realize you're trying to encourage virality of your film, encouraging people to share, encouraging it to potentially go in an algorithm.
Mhm.
That's what actually paid media is all about. It's about
Mhm.
beginning to start the flywheel. And so
Mhm.
filmmakers will come to me and say, like, Alan, I spent $10,000 on ads. I didn't get $10,000 return. And I'm like, well, you were never going to get that from the get go. The
Right.
key is you're thinking about how is this going to start people talking about my film?
Right.
That's what you're trying to kick off, right?
And that's where other forms of marketing, such as outreach to specific groups, if it's something that's has certain targeted niche organizations around it,
Yeah.
or doing some organic social, or if you have relationships with certain influencers that are related to all that kind of more organic, quote unquote, organic, but actually very labor intensive types of marketing would probably be very helpful.
100%, right? And so, I mean, one of the things, right, in using paid media, right, if you have, for instance, if you've built out an email list, right, using that email list to create lookalike audiences for paid media, also just re-hitting the same people that might be on your email list already, right? Number of like times they see that ad is key and important. And also thinking about, right, like when you're trying to drive in paid media, this is like a quick paid media pro hack, right? You want to find the lowest CPM that you can find with the right audience that wants to watch your film,
Mhm.
right? If you're making a faith based film, right, you don't want to target people generally in Los Angeles and New York where that's going to have a super high CPM on Meta, Facebook, Instagram. You want to
Mhm.
go middle America. You want to go to smaller towns, even in middle America, where people aren't spending as much on Facebook and Meta and ads generally, and find those interesting buckets of areas and utilize that. That's how to
Mhm.
think about it.
Right. Okay. So, do you want to talk a little bit about release date and like release timing at all? We've talked about it a little bit, but
Yeah. So one of the things that we generally see, right, is like newer releases are doing better generally, right? Films that have built, kind of 2020 to now, right? Those are we are seeing those perform better. But also amongst the top performers, really no difference if they were a newer release or a catalog release.
hmm,
Very little. And so, also don't forget, right? Like our data might be a little bit skewed based upon, hey, like we really, started as a distributor in 2020, right? And so everything is generally newer. So if it's before that, right, it's truly older catalog releases, right?
right.
And so you have to take everything with a little bit of grain of salt for the sake of trueness and data. But that's, how we think about it.
Yeah, yeah. There, I saw. I know we're going to get to questions later, but I saw one pop up, and can you just define metadata a little bit more? Like, what is like? Is
Yes.
that keywords that are really, or just go ahead and
Yeah.
define what metadata is?
So metadata is everything that relates to keywords, synopsis, naming of the video or the movie, genres, topics, themes. Basically, think about anything that you see on a screen that, like, when you're looking at a film, you got keywords, tags, all of those details are considered metadata. Even metadata can be is this film 4K? Is this 1080p? Right?
Mhm.
A lot of services utilize details. If it's 1080p, it gets higher, ranking in their algorithms.
Mhm.
And then SD assets. It's something filmmakers fail to realize. They sometimes will say like, "Oh, I'm going to submit to my distributor a lower quality asset because my internet's slow and I can't produce it." Well, guess what? You're shooting yourself in the foot because algorithms are going to favor higher quality assets.
Mhm.
We constantly filmmakers ask me every day like, "Oh, wait, I have a 4K file, but it's so much bigger." I'm like, take the time, send it to us, give us the 4K asset. A lot of services won't use it, but what about the ones that do? Right? Also, future proofing your film, right? Internet bandwidth is going to get faster in the next 5, 10 years. 4K is going to be this new standard. It's going to be the normal for a lot of things, right?
Right. I still remember the days in YouTube when they would restrict file size. Like,
Yes, yes, yes.
sorry, I'm that old and that,
Yeah,
and that like way back. I think that was happening around when we released Bomb originally, that you could only, that we had to compress all our extra content into like 540, I
yeah,
think.
yeah.
540 by 360, or I'm not sure if I have the right dimension.
Everyone was like, "Oh my god, I got to go to Vimeo because they actually support high quality assets."
Right.
Storage costs were real, right?
Yeah.
And that's how that's one of the things that these streaming services think about is they think about the cost of storage, and so it's one of the reasons why some of them have decided that they want to be more curatorial.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So that endless, in a sense, that endless shelf is not necessarily so endless in a sense.
it really should be. The cost is very minimal.
I agree.
Streaming services haven't thought yet into how they should really build their services for scale and
Mhm.
building the technological infrastructure that allows them to scale acquisitions effectively.
Yeah.
Distributors haven't even been able to do this, right? This is like one of the things that we are trying to push as a distributor that also has built technology is making it super simple, low cost for moving assets around the internet. And that's one of the things
Yeah.
that's really important.
Yeah, because it's, the initial promise of this back in '05, '04, whatever, was that like eventually, not eventually, but pretty soon, every film that you potentially want to watch is just going to be there available for you.
Yeah,
That has not happened.
not happened
And
at all, right?
no, plenty of movies are put up and then taken down. Like I gave away, I had a huge, this is also, here's dating myself. I had a huge VHS collection
Yep.
of things that I would tape off TV, okay, or cable. Okay, I was like one of those guys. And I threw it all away
Yeah.
because, or I recycled all of it. And now I'm starting, and not now, but it's like 5 years ago when I realized that that unlimited internet of every movie that you could ever want was going to be available was not happening.
Yeah.
And I was going, yeah.
Well,
So
and I mean, I have a lot of thoughts as to why that's happened, but I think the
I'm
key.
actually curious.
Oh, well, I think the key is right. You have to think about the way that the film and TV ecosystem has been started, right? It was started in a world of gatekeeping when you could only service a limited amount of content. And so acquisitions executives have been constantly taught that power laws exist. So
Hmm.
you've got to try and find the top 10%. Great. I agree with that 100%. The top 10% varies so much and changes so much from person to person. Algorithms are made to make and figure out what is the top 10% for John, the top 10% for Alan. And what our job is ultimately changing as, you know, in this industry, right, is much more about building the ability to personalize at scale and
Hmm.
find those gems. And jobs of, kind of acquisitions executives is really evolving much more into how do I cost effectively acquire titles at scale and personalize. And that's a bit of a controversial opinion that I have.
Hmm.
Um, People, may debate that, and but I think, similar to YouTube, right? It is we are constantly surprised about what performs, right, and what people want to watch.
Hmm.
And we are humans only capable of making decisions so fast. And I don't think I'm the person to tell John Reese what he wants to watch. I know
Right.
that. I
Yeah.
can't pick the neo noir film that John likes. I don't like
Mhm.
neo noir films.
Right. That's, to me, that's because I still feel, even though, because I do watch certain kinds of content on YouTube, and YouTube knows what I watch on YouTube. So, but I watch all different kinds of content all across
Yeah.
across various platforms. And I find that most of the other algorithms are not very good, maybe because I'm not so specific and and my tastes are all over the place. And I do feel like that it'll, you know, maybe the technology will change, but I do feel like and Brian Newman talks about this a lot, the need for curation, and to aid discoverability, and that there's still, I think, and I don't know whether, and for, I hope that we never get over where there's still a strong need for human curation. And
Yeah.
I think that's part of the appeal and why Letterbox is growing so rapidly.
Yep.
Like I think I think Brian was pointing out that it's grown 10 million people each year over the last several years,
Yep.
because people have that desire and need to hear about interesting art in general from other people.
Yep.
And that's something that I hope that we keep and cherish and don't lose in this, in our ever expanding technological, as we become subsumed in certain technologies.
Yeah. Algorithms ultimately, right, are trained by humans,
Mhm.
right? It's just our
Right,
job is to train the algorithm,
right,
right? That's the key, right? We are not the algorithm. Our job is to utilize our input to help move it. That's how it
right.
needs to be thought about, right? And that's the key is like, I know I use the word algorithm and it's kind of a scary word to folks, right? It's technology, it's change, it's different, but the key is humans are still doing the work to train that, right? And
Right.
that's what's important to realize. The
Yeah.
input of the creative decision of deciding what is neo noir, how to identify neo noir, that's something that's trained by humans, right?
Right.
That's what an acquisitions person is doing.
Right. But maybe those humans that are programming need a little film education.
Definitely. Definitely.
All right, so we're almost ready for questions. It's the one thing I just wanted to ask finally is TVOD dead?
TVOD's not dead. TVOD's not dead. It is definitely down. Don't get me wrong. It is, in a world where there's so many films and TV shows available to watch for free, getting people to pay is getting harder and harder. But it's not dead. There is still revenue to be made for the right films. We just had the top, a top 10 on iTunes this past month, or Apple TV as it's now called. I will get that right one day. And it's still a pretty big area, but it is not dead, but it is definitely shrinking. And so
Okay.
counting on transactional is definitely something that, filmmakers really shouldn't do unless they know they've got, the right audience.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, so I'm going to go to questions. You have Ansley and Sean moderating in the back channels and pulling up some questions. So I'm going to just start at the top. This is one. How can we get some Bollywood films with major Bollywood stars to Film Hub for global. So how to get major talent, other questions, others added questions about local celebrities or talent. But let's just go with the Bollywood question. And do you think
We
that there's
distribute a lot of Bollywood films. Would love to talk with you. Um, Please reach out at filmhub.com, and our acquisitions team would love to work with you on Bollywood films, whoever that is.
yeah. Okay, cool. Great.
Yeah. We have
Uh,
our filmmakers. This is a fun stat. We have filmmakers in 100 plus countries, and we pay in people in 100 plus countries. And so we believe that great talent comes from anywhere.
Great. Cool. All right, here's one. Who negotiates CPM for films or how to do it? But I don't think it's something that who I guess how is that negotiated, the CPM for films?
Yeah. So it is, well, let's see, how should I break this down? There's a couple, to not go too complicated here. The CPM for film is generally, there's what are called ad-based decision processing tools that basically are programmatic. There's types of ads that are programmatically bought and sold, and there are ads that are bought and sold that are not programmatic, that are kind of what are called direct sales. Programmatic advertising, the what's called a floor on the CPM, is set by the streaming service generally. There are exceptions to that, and so they say, hey, CPMS, if they're going to be, if an ad is going to be bought against this ad slot, it has to be at least at a $15 CPM, and it's generally set in the programmatic world by the service itself.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
simple answer, but there's a lot more to that. Definitely recommend, if you want to go deep in the world of CPMS, ChatGPT is a great place to start.
All right. Um, all right. So when posting my movies on, I guess this filmmaker's own YouTube channel negatively affect my possibility of getting on Tubi or other AVOD services.
So if you post your film on your own YouTube channel, you will not be able to get on YouTube Movies and TV or other YouTube channels, which can drive higher CPM and higher returns for you. So it affects you on YouTube. So that's one of the reasons we always recommend don't post on your own YouTube channels, because you probably have a lesser viewership potential than on other locations. In terms of, does that affect you on other AVOD services? No, it generally does not.
Okay, cool.
Each service you have to think about as kind of its own world, right? It's similar to territories of yesteryear, of selling your film in the UK, selling your film in Australia, selling it in Canada. Think about each streaming platform as a different territory. They don't overlap really.
Right. Okay, cool. What criteria does Film Hub have to pitch one of its titles to YouTube movies? How do you decide what you're going to pitch?
Yeah. So once again, same general things I talked about, right? Where we are looking at the data, right, of what YouTube is accepting. And so we are running through that data and seeing, hey, based upon what they're looking for, is this the right film that we should be pitching to them? And that's the job of our sales team, right? Our sales team is looking at that on a weekly basis and across all of our services that we're working with, right? They're talking to the buyers saying, hey, what are you looking for? We look at the data of what they've actually selected, and we utilize that information to reinform what we're pitching to them again. And they've given, they always give us kind of, basic, hey, we're looking for things that are brand safe in these topics, in these themes. And we also look at the, actual selections. Sometimes they don't always represent, and we have to kind of work with the buyers, ask for clarifications, and work with that. That's our job as a distributor, though, is to work with the buyers and make sure we know what they are looking for. It's one of the reasons also we generally try to communicate out to filmmakers. We say, like, hey, these are the topics and themes that are, we actually list directly on our dashboard what topics and themes the streaming channels are looking for. That's super important.
Cool. So this is actually pretty interesting. Do filmmakers need to create chapters for ad breaks, or is that created by, do filmmakers have any say in where the ad breaks are?
Yeah,
Can you set up your film in saying this is where I'd like the ad breaks to be? Or
good
is that
question.
something completely decided by either you or by YouTube?
Good question. So when we take deliverables from a film, we do ask that a filmmaker submits their chapter and ad break requests. Different services have different standards. So some services will take those ad breaks that we send to them, some will not. But its key is we want at least a recommended ad break and chapter from the filmmaker. It's super important
Yeah.
because
And then
you also want to know. Sorry, 1 second. Just one more piece is that we want those from the filmmaker because they know the best point also where an ad break is good. You know your film back and forth.
yeah,
You have spent years in some instances thinking through this storyline. You know where a break might be good or might be bad. So,
yeah.
you should do that.
And then how many breaks should filmmakers plan for ad breaks?
We generally say every 8 to 12 minutes we need an ad break.
So it's similar to old DVD chapters.
It's similar to old DVD chapters. They stole it from the same kind of thought process. Uh, it's the same over and over again in this
For
industry
your library
sometimes.
titles, if you already have your DVD chapters, you're kind of already set.
We use the exact same. I've literally, told filmmakers sometimes like, hey, just take your old DVD and use the exact same frame second codes.
Right. Okay. So apart from the 80/20 split for Film Hub, are there additional fees that are charged?
No expenses and no deductions. We do have
Okay.
added services if someone wants, like we create artwork, captions. We do have, the ability to upgrade to, have a dedicated, acquisitions executive that works with you, faster turnarounds, better analytics in our dashboard, but no expenses or deductions.
Okay. Is there any data on whether putting your film up on YouTube or other AVOD, or how essentially the question is, how does AVOD cut into TVOD revenue? And how much does it cut into TVOD revenue
I
once it
wouldn't
goes on AVOD?
I wouldn't think about it at all in that way, right? Each
Okay.
service is a different kind of beast methodology. I have had films that did thousands of dollars on TVOD revenue while it was live on an AVOD service. People constantly think that, oh, if I'm live here, I won't make money here. Guess what? Unless your film has a massive, massive audience and massive marketing that you're pushing it all to, they're not going to find your film on these other services. And so it's key is each service has its own, thought process and how you think about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a question here, which I think you've maybe answered, and I don't know how much you can answer this, is how does the YouTube revenue from YouTube movies and TV compared to Tubi or Pluto?
I would say generally, like the numbers I can share is like we're seeing that YouTube's numbers are 4x what we're seeing on other major AVODs. And there's a lot of other major AVODs that we work with.
Right, right. Okay. Let's see. Well, this is a question. Well, for Donnie, the question, where should we see political films? Well, that's a big question, that actually needs to be, that needs to be addressed. And actually, if you're interested in that question, and if for anyone who's, well, actually, everyone as of tomorrow or in the next couple of days will be on my Substack. I'll be posting about a new nonprofit that I've been involved in setting up called the Future Film Coalition. And we're having a town hall at the end of February, and you can sign up on the Substack for that. There will be links through my Substack. So that is a bigger question, and it's something, it's probably not, unless actually, that's my answer to it. But Alan, do you have a suggestion on where people can look for that?
It's hard because a lot of, we talk with a lot of buyers daily, and they are in a world where politically charged films are difficult, right? Same issues that we had, during COVID, where, anything that related to COVID, a documentary was just like off limits for most streaming services. They're like, we don't want to touch it, right? It's the same thing today on both sides of the aisle. It's just no one wants to broach the subject because everything is so charged down the middle. And so both sides don't want to talk to each other. And guess what? That just creates more and more problems. And we all need to open up and have a conversation, no matter what your beliefs are.
Yeah. So for me, well, there is this small channel called Means TV.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a co-op, and they actually cater to content that is more political. So that's one option. It's a small SVOD service, but in general, my feeling is that because of this kind of limitations of the major streamers that are even on the AVOD, that I'm hoping that that gives a little bit of a boost to TVOD, where people are going, I can't find my content here, I can't find content here, I can't find content here. Okay, so I won't spend as much on streaming services, but then I'll start to pay. Hopefully, this is a culture shift. I'll contribute, I'll rent it from the filmmaker. I'll rent it, and that money's going to the filmmaker. And, I know that's a big culture shift because in the last 5 years, we've all shifted, not all, but much of society has shifted from TVOD to seeing things for quote unquote free, either on AVOD or SVOD. So that's one potential hope until there's some other homes for this.
Yep.
Let's see. Oh, one question I had before I go. So, how about, because I always advocate for filmmakers to have fans of their work, which I feel that they should cultivate at every opportunity and get email addresses and
Mm-hmm.
create an email list to write reviews of content. And that I've seen like a Yale Business School study talking about the effects of reviews on Amazon. And so I'm kind of curious, do you feel like that's a component, and how would filmmakers use that component to boost their sales on YouTube?
Yeah. So obviously, in a lot of sections of YouTube, they have comment sections, right? Comments matter.
Hmm.
Comments matter. If you use the, you got little thumbs up, right? In a lot of these apps, YouTube especially, if you got a lot of thumbs up, people are gonna watch it, right? It helps. It's one extra piece of. It's actually another instance of metadata. It's another instance of metadata that helps drive towards your film. So any sort of reviews, definitely something that help, right? One of the things I always say to filmmakers is try to Google your film. If you Google your film and it's shows up simply in Google search and it's got the nice shows your ratings on Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb or Letterboxd and shows up in those, guess what? If someone's deciding where they want to watch your film, it shows up well there. It's going to look good. It's an important piece,
Right.
right?
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about features. How does YouTube deal with, so series is one thing. So the big question, I guess, in a sense, is shorts. Is there a role for shorts on YouTube? YouTube, and do you handle shorts?
We do handle shorts. We distribute to some shorts channels. They don't work for YouTube movies and TV. YouTube movies and TV is only longer form content over 40 minutes. But there are some shorts channels. The key is realize when you're selling a short, it's advertising based upon viewership length and number of ads sold. So
Mhm.
already in a short, it's very hard to make money because
Right.
if you're a 3 minute short or a 10 minute short versus a 60 minute movie, you're already at 1/6 of the revenue potential.
Right.
So
Right.
you
Yeah.
start out the
Yeah.
gate.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. I'm just going through. I think I'm going to answer a couple more. I'm going to ask a couple more.
Okay.
Uh, oh, okay. Here's one. When reaching out to Film Hub, what do they need to have ready? And what can they do to maximize their application?
So we generally recommend we generally recommend that you have your completed film ready, that you have looked over and have your deliverables ready. So we have a great help center that explains all of our deliverables that we need for your assets, your captions. We recommend that you have those ready to go, and reach out at that point. That's the best time to reach out. But if you need help getting your deliverables prepared, we have a team that helps you do that. Right? We are a full service distributor. We have the capabilities helping you as you need. Or if not, we have one of the largest networks in film and TV and can help you find somebody.
Right. And then another question, something that I always ask distributors, are filmmakers able to carve out certain rights, like for instance, educational, or the right to be able to sell the film off their website, or other kinds of rights like that?
Great question. So the rights we take are non-exclusive for the most part. Sometimes we do take exclusive rights, depends on the deal that we're doing. In the instance of non-exclusive, you can carve out territories. If you do want to remove a channel, we do have a service that allows you to do that. It is a paid service, but we always want to make sure that you are in control of your rights to the most extent possible.
Right. So, is there a genre that streamers can't get enough of? I mean that's pretty odd. I mean, true crime. I mean, it's the stuff that they're buying still
Yeah.
for documentary true crime, celebrity, cults, etc. So it's a matter of like what's like those genres are kind of our, I guess, aliens and alien abduction. I'm just
Yeah.
rattling. I'm not even letting Alan answer. I'm just answering because my knowledge. But I'm kind of curious. And so the thing is like, how do you get other kinds of content? But like, are there any others that I missed besides that?
Totally depends on the service, depends on, where they are. Maybe they already have that service may already have a deal, an output deal where they have all the UFO documentaries that they want, right?
Mhm.
Maybe that
Yeah,
happens.
yeah.
It's, it varies.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
cool. So, I think that's all for the questions, and we've already gone like an hour and 15. Thank you so much for your time. Is there any last thing that we haven't talked about that you'd like to potentially end with?
I think the number one thing is for filmmakers, YouTube opportunity is massive right now. If you are not taking advantage of it right now, you're missing out. And also for any of you filmmakers that have titles with other distributors, sales agents, you need to be spreading the word because the opportunity to make money is now. Every service goes through cycles. The
Mhm.
cycle now to get your film or show on YouTube is now. You need to do that. And if you don't act quickly, you're going to miss out.
I think you're going to be inundated with requests tomorrow. So, well, cool. Well, thank you so much, Alan. This was super informative. Really appreciate it. Anyone who's not on my Substack, which I think most of you are, I post about and I do webinars about this kind of material all the time. As you probably already know, I also work with filmmakers. I'm going to have a new thing on my Substack about how that can happen. And I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much, Alan. Thank you for suggesting that we do this and really appreciate the generosity of your time and also your staff's time for helping make this happen.
Awesome. Well, John, thank you so much for having me and happy filmmaking to everybody.
All right. Okay. Thanks. Oh, the one thing I should talk about. So just sorry before you
Yeah.
go, upcoming, we're going to do a case study on Eno. We're also going to be in March. That's in the beginning of March. At the end of March, I'm going to be doing a webinar with the four major alternative platforms being Kinema, Gather, Jolt, and Eventive. So that will be a pretty long webinar that's coming up. And then also, if you're curious, I do have an Ask Me Anything next week that you can sign up for. I'm eventually these are going to become for paid members, but next week it's a free for all. So come and join that. And great. Again,
Awesome.
thanks, Alan. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
folks. Have a good one.